to make a presentation on two important issues, and we will also have comments from Dr. Vince Adams, who is an executive member of the Alliance for Change, and we will have a statement also from Beverly Alert, Member of Parliament. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Jaretha Finance, Member of Parliament. Jaretha, please go ahead with your statement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to have a combined statement on the two issues that I'm looking at today, and it goes: the breakdown of the guardrails of democracy continues, a lack of accountability and oversight. It is alarming to witness the breakdown of the guardrails of democracy in Guyana. The erosion of democratic norms and institutions undermines the of a free and just. The rule of rights and freedom of expression are essential pillars of democracy, and any threat to these principles must be taken seriously. The challenges faced by independent institutions such as the media and civil society are cause for concern. The growing lack of accountability and oversight in Guyana is more serious now than ever before, as the government's failure to ensure proper checks and balances in financial management is a leading cause of corruption, mismanagement of public funds, and loss of trust in government institutions. It is imperative that a government plays its role in institutions responsible for financial oversight, particularly parliamentary committees. The PAC, being one of those committees, has been under attack by the PPPC's government since their return to office, starting from the removal of the chair of the PAC, David Patterson, then to the amendment of the standing order to change the quorum of the PAC. The AFC warned against both actions, and today we are witnessing the reason behind such actions. Since the amendment to the standing order that required 3 members present to have a quorum, to now requiring that 2 members from government, 2 from opposition, and the chair must be present to constitute a quorum, the PAC meetings has been cancelled 12 times, all on the account of the PPP members' absence. The functioning of the PAC is crucial to ensuring financial oversight, and it is concerning that the PAC has not been meeting regularly, especially with an accumulated backlog of 3 years of the Auditor General's report yet to be examined. This delay is crucial, and it is a critical process of ensuring accountability and transparency in government financial management, which is essential for good governance. It is essential that the committee meets regularly and expeditiously examines the report to ensure that any irregularities or misuse of public funds are identified and addressed promptly. The committee must fulfill its duty to the people of Guyana and ensure that public resources are being used for the benefit of the nation. Citizens also play a role in ensuring accountability and transparency in the use of public funds. The media, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders must remain vigilant and actively monitor government spending. Citizens must also demand access to information about government's finances and hold elected officials accountable for their actions. A prime example of the PPP government's lack of transparency is the current EID that saw a contract being signed without any parliamentary oversight or supporting legislation and no public consultation. The Alliance for Change continues to call for full accountability into this transaction that is sunk in secrecy and call on the PPP to stop spending taxpayers' dollars haphazardly. Major questions on data integration, data protection, privacy are yet to be answered by government. The lack of financial oversight and accountability is a significant challenge for Guyana's development, and it is crucial that the government takes urgent action to address these issues and ensure that public funds are used effectively and efficiently for the benefit of all Guyanese citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Parliament Rita Fernandes. And if we could have the comments that I know Dr. Vince Adams wanted to make on one of the recently held public hearings. Over to you, Dr. Adams.
Thank you, Kathy, and thanks for the attendance of our media folks, and welcome. I would like to talk about the recent EAB hearing on the gas plant that our own former ministers, Kathy Hughes and David Patterson, attended with some other very important people because it was an important issue. And one of the things that came out was the specific question was asked by David about the cumulative study, because that's the only way you're going to know. Here you have basically three plants, and an EIA was done on the pipeline. And then the question was asked, how about the cumulative study, meaning that when all of these plants are operating, what are the cumulative impact in the environment? Very simple, straightforward, normal question. And the executive director of the EPA said, yes, we've done such a study. And David requested that, okay, could you forward the study? He said, oh, absolutely. When the study that David got was the EIA for the pipeline that was already completed. So we have a problem here. Is it that the executive director does not understand what a cumulative study is? Because that's not a cumulative study. So we are asking and requesting again that if there was a cumulative study, providing that the EPA understands what a cumulative study is, if there was a cumulative study, we're requesting that cumulative study be forwarded to us or even be released to the public. It's very important to inform the public in this major decision-making process. The second thing that is really disturbing, not to me, but should be disturbing to everybody that came out of that meeting, was a statement by the executive director again of the EPA, which says, and I'm reading here from the newspapers, it says, Mr. Parshram assured the board that the role of the EPA is not limited to deciding whether an EIA is required or not for projects, but rather to implement provisions into permits to form part of the regulating project. I have never heard anything so dumbfounding, especially coming from the leadership of the EPA. Now, how in heaven's name could you even come up with the provisions that you're claiming that's your role is to implement provisions? How could you come up with provisions without an EIA? Again, I've said it over and over, and many have said it. The EIA is the Bible of these type of major projects. It identifies hazards, it applies scientific data and information and studies to identify hazards. And so if you do not have an EIA, you have not even identified those hazards. So for him to come and say, well, our role is not to only determine whether you need an EIA or not, but to implement the provisions. You cannot have provisions in these major projects without an EIA. I found that statement, as a matter of fact, to be very disrespectful to the Guyanese people, to be very dismissive, arrogant, flippant, and it's an uncaring betrayal of the interests of the people who the EPA is supposed to be protecting. But the problem is, the bigger problem, it also reflects the grave, not only arrogance, but incompetence to which the people of Guyana are subjected. Hold on one minute, Let me hook it up. Let me also talk about the a little bit about the PSA, and I have not, as I said before, and we at the AFC has said before, this new PSA is nothing but a distraction to begin with, to move away from this whole discussion and issue about renegotiating so that we can get a better deal and a fair deal for the people of Guyana. Even the president and vice president and many of the upper echelons of the current government they have said that this is the worst agreement we've ever had. So they're trying. This is a distraction to start with. We've said that it's unfair to the new investors, and it's a protection of Exxon to start it. But nevertheless, here let me point out a few things that I've picked up here recently, which is also associated with the environment. It said subcontractors shall have adequate insurance coverage too. Now, we don't care about subcontractors. We have no connection, no legal connection to subcontractors. Whatever agreement you're signing is between the government and the contractor, not the subcontractors. The subcontractors are not liable to us. So the government of Guyana should care less about subcontractors. It's the same trick, by the way, that they played with when they were handing over all of the waste over to these subcontractors who were supposed to treat them. They're saying, okay, I generate the waste, you take these billions of pumps or tons of waste, and I'm washing my hands. And that's when I was at EPA, we implemented this cradle to grave process to say, you shall be responsible for that waste, but generated it to the time it's buried. And it's the same cradle to grave concept that the vice president seems to be running around taking credit for. The other thing it says costs, losses, and damages incurred to the extent not made good by the insurance are recoverable. That means that we will be paying for anything over and above whatever paltry insurance there is. Because if it's recoverable, remember we're paying that recoverable cost. And then the other thing is, it's about taxes. Now they're saying, well, okay, we're going to make sure that the company and its employees and everybody pay taxes. However, that taxes again, that's also now a recoverable item, which means again we're paying for it. And the last thing is, the new PSA has proposed the cost recovery be capped at 65%. Again, folks, now it's currently 75%. That is an artificial cap. That's not what it's costing. The extra is being carried over. So when it's 65 or 50 or 40, that's not the issue. This is taking out that clause that says that cost has to be carried over. We don't know what the real cost is. It will be 95%. Anything multiplied is carried over month after month, which means you may never pay it off. So now to say that you're dropping it to 65%, that whatever it is above that 35, it's actually cost. It's also going over. So those are some of the flaws that we find in this new proposed PSA. Like I said before, there is nothing else but a distraction. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you, Dr. Vince Adams, and I'd like to invite Member of Parliament Beverly Alert to give her presentation. Beverly still has an issue with no video. I promise that we will send out with our messages a photograph that the media can use, certainly over her audio. So Beverly, please go ahead with your statement on the recent trend, unfortunately, of a high incidence of violence in our schools.
Thank you, Kathy, and I'm looking for that guy Murphy, But yeah, to say that the Alliance for Change has taken note of the increase in violence in schools. Over the past few months, there have been reports where either teachers or students have been victims of violence, either in the school or close to the school environs. And even the GTU president has admitted that several teachers were attacked this year, and we're only at the end of the first quarter of the year. Some incidents have made it into the public domain, but many others, especially where students are assaulted, go unreported. The attacks on teachers, whether by students, school leavers, or adults, is indicative of the decay eating away at our society, where the gap between the haves and the have-nots continues to widen. The situation is complex, to say the least. One, there now exists a situation where those close to the seat of power believe that they can operate as though they are beyond reproach, where they derive power by association. So then you have those who believe that they can buy, bribe, or pay their way out of any situation. And then on the other side, you have the have-nots, who are barely able to survive from one day to the next, and watch in frustration and growing resentment as the wealth of the other group multiplies, while they cannot pay their bills, and it's a struggle to put food on the table. Children see the suffering of their parents, and they share those sufferings, and they become angry when they see their parents working hard, yet not able to make ends meet. And those children are likely to act out that anger in acts of violence. A society where teachers are physically and verbally assaulted by students and their families just simply cannot develop. Where are we going as a nation when a judge is accused of abusing a teacher in her school? A pupil can get his relatives to give his teacher a thrashing. A youth gang can run into a school, leaving a young teacher all bloodied in their wake. A teacher feels compelled to defend herself with a cutlass. Where are we headed? While the party supports calls for increased security at school and for perpetrators to face the full extent of the law, these are only band-aid remedies to a festering sore. When the potential victim leaves the safety of the schoolyard, the threat still exists. What happens then? In addition to increased security at school, there's also the need for student counselors in each school who can identify potential with students, especially responsible choices, and where needed, work with the parents or guardians of these students. But in addition to such measures, we must develop a society where each citizen believes that they can get a fair share of this fast-growing economic pie. The divide between the haves and the have-nots must be bridged. An environment where citizens not aligned to the government perceive that they are being discriminated against, and fair victimization if they speak out just cannot continue. The anger and resentment is growing, and the violence in schools that we're witnessing now is but a symptom of where such a practice will lead us. It's down a slippery slope. Guyana will go nowhere once we continue with the status quo as is. We have to do something to bridge that divide, to let everyone feel that they're sharing in this economic pie. The resentment is heightening. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you very much, Beverly. Members of the media, we'd like to go to your questions right now, which of course can be posed to any of the representatives here this afternoon. Please, as is customary, identify yourself and the agency that you represent today, and of course to whom you will direct your question. Okay, any hands are up? I see Svetlana Marshall.
Hi, good afternoon.
Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. Svetlana Marshall from News Source. 3 questions to Ms. MP Finance. You spoke about the PAC NOC meeting. What more? I know that the opposition parties would have spoken about this issue before. What more could be done at the level of Parliament? If the parties prepared to take the issue to the International Committee, have the parties spoken to the diplomatic community about this issue, the inability of the the Public Accounts Committee to meet? And secondly, you also spoke about the EID contract. There have been calls for the contract to be laid in the Assembly. Is the opposition going to move a motion for this to happen?
All right, thank you, Svetlana, for your questions. The first one with PAC, we continue to exhaust all efforts when it comes to the PAC. This is not a matter that we just started fighting. We've been fighting it for some time. It just so happens that the government continues to abuse its one-seat majority in Parliament to override all actions, all democratic norms that the Parliament is used to. Never before did we ever see a change of the chair of the PAC by any sitting government. Never before did we see a quorum change when it comes to the PAC meeting. And today we are seeing the PPP exhaust every effort to make sure that they are not held accountable by any means necessary. I think one of the things I did mention in the statement is that since the change of the quorum, the PAC meeting was cancelled 12 times. That is crazy. At one point in time, I think we took 8 months to hold 5 meetings that should have been taken 5 weeks because of the absence of persons to come. Told the PPP members to actually show up for meetings, and there are so many issues being dealt with there, but we will continue to do everything in our power, and if it requires going to the National Assembly again, submitting motions again, all of those things we will continue to do. As it relates to the EID, there's so many questions there, and as I continue to do my own bit of research on that matter, the more research you do, the more questions that are unanswered by government. And I have to say that it is necessary at this point in time. You can't talk about good governance. People love to go out and speak about good governance and transparency and all of these things, but none of those things are being checked off right now when we are looking at the manner in which they're operating. We just saw out of the blues, as we see, a contract signed, and no one have any knowledge. The public doesn't have any knowledge, more so the Parliament does not have any knowledge as it regards to where the funding is coming from. We just came out of a budget process only last month, but now we have something here that is monies are being spent, millions of US dollars being spent, and for something that was not budgeted for. There's no excuse that could be made by the government of today, especially when it is none other than the president coming forward to say that this is a matter that he has been in talks with persons from the UAE since 2021 October. So it is absolutely crazy to see how things are being done right now. And I support all calls for transparency. I support all calls for questions to be answered, particularly from the media. And I do note also the PPP's habit. It's a habit now of just evading these questions altogether from the media. The most important questions are not answered. One of the things I want to stick in at this point, since we are on the EID, is the fact that PPP government they are saying that they are mirroring something that is done and something that is successful there in the UAE. But if you were to go and do any bit of research on it, you will realize that the system there utilized in the UAE, the UAE, it has Emirates ID. And one of the main things that you would note about the Emirates ID is that ID, that electronic ID there, it is managed by a system, it is manned by an authority called the EIDA, the Emirates Identity Authority. That authority was actually established 1 year prior to the first card being issued, So it's one thing to say that, well, look at this country has it, this country is going in this direction, but when it comes to setting up the framework, the structure to make sure that is successful here, none of those things are being done, and this is the issue that we have. And another thing that I want to note lastly on that is that the ID there, the Emirates ID that they are basically modeling it off of, again, that particular ID utilizes biometric data as well. in the form of the thumb, the fingerprints. So it is one thing to see the government going out and having all of that talk about not supporting biometrics and all of that, and then they come forward with a system that they're trying to model from the UAE that actually utilizes biometrics and all of those things. So it is very haphazard. The lack of transparency is just glaring, and I fear that what we will end up with is a whole bunch of money being spent with actually nothing in nowhere in the short run or the long run for us to see as a tangible benefit for all the millions of dollars, US dollars that will be spent.
Thank you, Jarita. I can just add to the questions Svetlana asked, and just say that in December, mid-December, just before we broke off for the Christmas holidays, as you know, the AFC had members of our executive met with the U.S. ambassador, and we went to great lengths to explain the challenges within the parliament, the fact that we thought that parliament was not operating at its optimal, the delays in the sitting of the parliament, the slothfulness in answering questions, the deliberate non-answering of many questions, and of course the lack of bringing some of those committees into operation. So we did raise that with the U.S. ambassador, and it is our intention. Only yesterday, as a party, we were discussing the correspondence that we will be sending to the CPA and the IPU, which are all international parliamentary organizations. Okay, I see Davina has her hand up. Davina, over to you.
That's a follow-up, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, so are you, thanks for that bit of information, are you saying that in the letters to be sent to the various organizations, you will be including the issue of the PAC inability to meet? And a follow-up for MP Finance, the Attorney General in addressing the issue of the EID and the contract to which the government signed said that it was sole source because it is dealing with sensitive materials, and so that was his justification and saying that this is something that is practiced globally. How do you feel about that?
I can go first if that's okay. All right, so I did read the comments coming out of from Anand Nandalal, and also some comments coming out from Ashley Singh on the matter justifying the sole sourcing of it. And when it comes to the procurement aspect of the contract, that is just one aspect of the questions, the main questions being asked. And I can say that when it comes to sole sourcing, the one that they are trying to abuse, the loophole they are trying to exploit right about now is that of matters of national security. That is the one that they are trying to utilize to cover that. But you know, by just saying that, and I have even more concerns now that those statements are coming out, because if you are saying that you are looking at matters of national security, then why did you not see it necessary to even address the National Assembly on this matter before you go and sign a contract on it? Because as it is right now, as a member of parliament, I do not know which national security concerns we're having, because this was never tabled at the level of National Assembly, and so it raises more questions than answers. Once again, you cannot just go out there and try to exploit whatever loophole you may see in the Procurement Act and so forth. This is not something that we've done before. I see them trying to compare it to I believe it was passports and so forth. We have passports forever. We have been printed having passports contracts all done forever. That's not new. This is something that is brand new legislation needs to be in place to answer these questions. This is not something that have an existing framework for us to go by. So those justifications that's been put forward by those members of government, it's just it's very weak to say the least, and they are putting the horse before the cart. They have always been doing it. Well, from 2020, been observing how they're moving. It continues in the same line. They have not put in place any infrastructure. They have not put in place any legislation, but they're going forward and spending people's money, taxpayers' dollars, as though it is just from their pockets. You know, that's the honest truth.
I think, you know, it's that excuse of national security, we all know is a red herring. I mean, at this stage, there are certain requirements for the procurement stage. And I think Jaretha has highlighted the fact and just reminded us of the environment that needs to be established. The legal environment, the operational environment. The operational environment will include serious concerns in terms of data protection, in terms of cybersecurity, how you protect all of that information. If you consider that we created a smart city and a video conference facility out just behind the Arthur Chung Convention Center, which has very specialized private data that is being collected in terms of traffic and the people using the traffic, the roads, our national traffic systems. And the public at least knew that in theory, that plan was going to be put in place. And they certainly knew the cost. And they certainly got a glimpse of what the location would look like. There was no need to provide them, the general public, with the ins and outs of the security and the infrastructure and the private mechanisms in terms of the operation of it. And therefore we feel that at this point in time, at a minimum, people should have known, as we said a couple of weeks ago, what this project was about. What is going to be in place to protect our most private data? Where is the legislation that will support that? And such a card, this has been done in, I'm sure, more than 50 or 60 countries. This is normal nowadays. And therefore, it automatically requires an interconnection with supporting agencies. We explained the first time we raised this, that such a card has a part that deals usually with person's personal data. There are education records, there are health records, there are the ease of doing business, because one of the important things is allowing persons to use the card to access government services online. We explained and used the scenario of Estonia, who we actually got here to come. So all of that needs to be done and has not been done. And if it was done, has not been presented to the public before we even get to the data protection and the operational aspect. So that is just an absolute red herring. I'd like to go to Davina at this point in time.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Davina Bagat. I'm with Kaiser News. My question is to Dr. Vincent Adams. Dr. Adams, in your remarks, you spoke about the PSA, the new PSA, the draft agreements that are presently out. You mentioned that costs, losses, and dangers, all these things can be recoverable under this new PSA. But can you kindly explain or state which section of the PSA you saw this in? Because I'm not sure if you saw this, but there's an article, there's a provision in the contract, the new model contracts, in Article 30.2, indemnification. Can I just quote a brief section for you? It says the contractor shall indemnify, defend, and hold the minister and government of Guyana harmless against all claims, losses, and damages of any nature whatsoever. And it continues, but I just wanted to perhaps explain where you made your conclusion from. Thank you.
Vince, put on your mic.
Sorry about that. Davina, I would have to go back. There are some sections. I think it was around section 3 or something. I can't remember exactly. And it was, matter of fact, it's a combination of what's in the new contract plus some other comments from some other writers. But I would have to go back. But these were specified, and the areas were identified in the section as to the recoverable cost. But I don't have it here in my notes as to which section it came from.
No problem, Dr. But if you can get that to me, I'd really appreciate it to help my article. I have another question, if I can go ahead, Ms. Hughes.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. So off of the press statement, Kaiser News carried a story recently in which we reported that ExxonMobil is planning to buy their own fleet of vehicles to move their employees. We know that this can have an impact on local content, so I would like to know what is the AFC's position on this. Thank you.
Well, I think thankfully I heard just a couple minutes ago that that request was denied, as it should be.
This was not reported to the media, at least. Can you say where you got your information from?
I actually heard it on a newscast, and I think it might have been on 104, maybe an hour or so ago. Forgive me if I'm making an error there, but I certainly heard it because I thought, well, thankfully, because I don't think that that's acceptable. I can't imagine that taxpayers' money would be used to buy vehicles for Exxon.
MPUs, if I could just jump in to offer some clarification, the request was not denied. What was denied is a request for duty free. So I think it's still on the table that Exxon could buy the vehicles, but the government was not granting any duty free concession for them to purchase those vehicles.
Okay, I got you. Thanks ever so much for the clarification. I would say, Davina, that this is an issue that we've not discussed as a party, but as I said, I certainly do not see, I think that would be an expense of doing business that Exxon should be paying for. Vince, is there anything you would like to comment on that? You're more the expert on how this operates in other countries.
Well, if they're buying, and I not to address the the specific question specifically to our situation, but I know as a practice, vehicles, and this is this other cost recovery?
I am not sure because
vehicles, any expense, all expenses, as long as it's related to the project. As a matter of fact, the contractor will not, it doesn't matter what it is, all expenses are charged to the project. What a company normally does, they even allocate, even at the higher level, even the managers, they allocate certain time to each project, etc. So vehicles are, that's fair game to be allocated. The cost of vehicles are fair game to be allocated to project costs.
Well, I stand corrected, and I'm glad that I asked Adams, who is an expert in this area. Thank you, Vince.
Just a follow-up, please.
Yeah, one follow-up, because I see Dennis, I see Kirk, and I see a message from Javon. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Given that Exxon will be allowed to purchase their own vehicles now, what I would like to know from the party, are you concerned that this can have an impact on local content and these jobs, these people who rely on providing services to ExxonMobil to make a living and so on? Yeah.
Well, like I said, we haven't discussed it as a party. So I would ask that you allow us to do that. I gave my opinion, and Dr. Vince has given his expertise in this issue. So I think at this stage we'd like to leave it there. I would not like to be any more definitive because we haven't discussed it.
Well, let me add it, Kathy. Again, just in a general response to that, because one of the issues that always comes up with local content is that is the vehicle, could they obtain the product? No, not specific vehicle, but any product. Local content means basically that you're supposed to be using local services, equipment, materials locally, unless obtain it locally. If you need, let's say in this specific case of vehicles, if they've got some specific vehicles that they cannot source locally, then there is a reasonable justification for them to bring it in, and which may impact the allocation to the local content.
Davina, can we promise to get a little more information and maybe prepare a statement on that for you by early next week?
I would appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Sure. And Dennis Chabral, Dennis, thank you for your patience. You have a question?
Yes. What is your party's position with respect to the arrest and possible charging of Mr. Wilson?
I will say that, as quite a few of you may know, our leader, Mr. Ramjatan, has been out of the country for the last 2 weeks. He will be back tomorrow. We do not have a definitive position. We will be preparing a statement over the weekend. But there are some considerations that I would be willing to raise, which have been discussed amongst a few of the members of the party. And those considerations are, firstly, we certainly think that we need to ensure that persons, all Guyanese, actually listen to the complete presentation. The offending statement literally appears in the last 3 minutes of Mr. Ogunse's presentation. What is of concern is that he makes reference to the fact that he had a discussion and quote unquote with a white diplomat. Those are the words he used, so I'm quoting that. And he mentions that the comment that we seem to be referring to was spoken by this white diplomat. The fact, it is worrying that in a lot of the reports, we see the comment being attributed to Mr. Ogunse, although in the actual speech, he starts by saying he had a conversation how much ever years ago, and this was what he alleges and attributed to the person. I am just saying that I'm not giving a position. I am just saying that there might be lots of people that are responding to what is alleged to have been reported and not what was necessarily said. We generally regret that the political landscape that we see that exists today is focused primarily on the government side of shutting down any kind of criticism. And this can be from individuals and organizations. The whole sense that that persons are not allowed to criticize the actions of the government is a worrying one. And we have seen extremes of this, where in our political history, where individuals like Ronald Waddell and Courtney Kwam Ewing have lost their lives for nothing else than criticizing and presenting a different perspective on the governance model that the PPP implements. So that's the one concern that we have, that at an unfortunate extreme, persons have lost their lives. And even on a very basic level, you have the few members of civil society, and civil society in every other part of the world are encouraged to present their views and their thoughts, because there's no one way, there's no one group of people that can claim to know what is best for this country. And therefore, we should have a landscape where members of civil society should be allowed to say, to question and to criticize, and not to be publicly assaulted in the manner we have seen. We've seen that with the Human Rights Association, and the one that I found the lowest of the lowest occurred last year when they were attacking the little old ladies, the nuns that are still part of the Ursuline order, for signing onto a petition. And this is an order that has very few nuns right now. They make no money. These are a group of women that were brave enough to leave England more than 100 years ago to come to a difficult mosquito-infested territory called Guyana in those days, and to teach and to implement a ministry. So the fact that we don't have an environment where persons can raise these comments and views, and that you are willing to shut out persons' personal liberties, because once you charge Mr. Agunsi, his liberties are going to be affected. So I think it is a sad day, and those are some of the things that we consider. It is now with the police, and I'm sure in the courts. That would be my comment on behalf of the AFC, and we can come up with a written statement, as I said, over the weekend. Can we go to Kurt Campbell, please?
Thank you, MPUs. I just have about 3 short questions, but I'll ask them one at a time. MP Leonard Schuman's tenure in the National Assembly ends today. He is also the Deputy Speaker. I wanted to know if the AFC has conditioned its mind to where its support will go for a new Deputy Speaker.
No, we haven't done that. We have
Right.
not done that yet.
No problem. And I want to take you back. Sorry, go ahead.
The way we have seen the other member of the opposition operate, I think it's just a technicality. I mean, we know that he's not interested in really bringing some of the issues that affect all Guyanese to the Parliament. We don't hear him complaining about the lack of sittings. We hear him complain about not being able, denying members of Parliament the opportunity to ask questions and to be answered by the competent government representative. So there's a whole slew of things, and we hope that whoever comes in have a more independent position, but we haven't seen that today, and so our expectations are very low, I would say. To your next question.
Thank you. I wanted to take you back to pre-2015, when the AFC was independent of the EPNU, to ask what obtained then in terms of the annual state resources guaranteed to the opposition. Did all of the funding go to the EPNU as the main opposition at the time, and whatever support did the AFC receive, if any?
At the time, if you're talking about, did you say pre-2015?
Yes.
Right. So pre-2015, we were 3 parties within the Parliament. The Alliance for Change, the APNU, and of course the PPPC. The AFC has never gotten 1 cent, never been allocated any funds. In those days, the operation was so, or should I say, there was a crassness. That's what I'd like to say. There was a crassness where we were told that we needed to go to the larger of the opposition parties and to ask for any funds that we thought we should require. We raised this with GCOM on several occasions. We raised this in the Parliament to no avail, and we just took the position that in the interest of the people, the AFC would forge ahead and try to represent our constituency, which we have done. We do not have a mature system in Guyana like you will find in England, where members of parliament, regardless of which side they're on, receive assistance in terms of a researcher that helps to do the research that they require. We do not see them having access to an office as such. And members of parliament really in a Guyana context continue to be part-time members of parliament. And the stipend that we get, if you think about it, a visit would not even pay. 1 month could not even pay for a charter to Paramakatoy, for example, if we wanted to go and visit our supporters there. The cost of air transport to some of our interior locations go well beyond the $200,000 we get every month.
Right. Thank you, which takes me to my final question. The leader of the TNM, Dr. Asha Kissoon, who will be replacing Dr. Schumann, spoke today about seeking constitutional reform to ensure that opposition parties are independent of each other and can access state resources to carry out their work. Would the AFC support that?
Well, just from what I've said, that's how we view it. That's how it should be. That's how parliamentarians can do and deliver to their constituencies. In Guyana, we've had a situation where, the government in power prior to 2015 and even now have never felt that it was to their advantage, have never had the political maturity to say, yeah, let's all compete. Let's all serve the people of Guyana. We compete every 5 years. We want a system to be fair. We want a system to be transparent. And although persons will lose, we want to see people participate in the governance of the country. I think the PPP since 2020 have shown beyond any shadow of the doubt the lack of the opposition selecting people for any of the state boards and all the other things we've been speaking about for the last 2 years. It is absolutely clear that they're not interested in providing a level playing field that they can compete and win on. And maybe we urge them, if they are absolutely sure that they're going to be re-elected, then you have nothing to fear. You can make sure that each of the parties have the necessary resources. If Ms. Kissoon is able to be more successful in that area, I definitely know we would be willing to support, and we wish her the best in the parliament and in her efforts to do that. It's good to have somebody else picking up the fight.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, dear Ms. Hughes, if I could,
Sure.
also
Please, go ahead.
that this would not be something that Ms. Kissoon is championing. I just want to make a note that Schumann himself, sitting in that very seat that Ms. Kissoon is coming to occupy, made several statements in the National Assembly calling for the very same thing. This is not something that was not called for prior. Then Schumann did call for those things also, and even though the PPP placed him as the deputy speaker of the House and all of those things, when those calls were made, it was just like, as we say in Guyana, throwing water on top back. It was absolutely silence, and there was absolutely no comment even from the government on that matter. So I just wanted to remind persons of that also.
And it all, thank you, Judith, and it all goes to the lack of independence that we are seeing displayed by Parliament, which is a crucial issue that we have been speaking on for more than the last year. Parliament in Guyana today does not operate as an independent body. Can I go to Adam Harris right now?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. This is a question for Mr. Director of Finance. Is there any regulation concerning the operation of the Public Accounts Committee? For example, if you're absent from some sittings of Parliament, you could be banned or something or removed like that. Is there any such regulation for the Public Accounts Committee?
There is a regulation that says if someone is absent, I believe, I'm not too keen on the time, but I believe it is 3 consecutive times without the leave of the chair, then that person, then that could be enacted. But as it is, if persons continue to ask to be excused and so forth, that's where the bit of the difference comes in.
Yep.
But sorry, asking to be excused and not being granted permission. I can ask to be excused and be not granted permission. If the speaker refuses, is there a penalty? Because I noticed the frustration. You want me to examine the records, and you said there are 3 years of records that are not examined, that have not been examined. Surely there must be something to guarantee sittings of the Public Accounts Committee.
Yeah, there was something, and it is frustrating to say the least. But that thing was that the quorum was 3 persons. So the opposition side, having 4 members on that committee, including the chair, had the flexibility to actually carry on with the work of the committee, even if the government decided not to come. But that was wiped away when the quorum change was had, and this is why we came to the public and we spoke about it for hours and weeks on end, over and over. But again, I say the government continue to abuse that one-seat majority in the National Assembly, and to also that they were even tapping into the seat there that Ms. Kisun is going to come and fill now. So as I speak on these matters, I'm thinking also that we hope that when Ms. Kisun comes, she also not only look for this strength in mobility financially and so forth, but also to support these dire issues that we're facing as a nation right now. But I do not see any other way. And I can share this also, Mr. Harris, like for last Monday, the meeting of the PAC was not even called. The meeting of the PAC a notice was not even sent out, although every Monday is a statutory date for us to meet, because because the members of the PPP indicated their unavailability to be there. So that is another issue that we have to fight. So the fight continues every single day, but these things just keeps adding up to the fact that PPP is not interested in accountability. They're not interested in any bit of good governance whatsoever. So when these things are seen, I think and I'm hoping that the media just calls them out as it is. This is not just simply avoiding meetings of the PAC. This is avoiding any bit of oversight, particularly financial oversight, and we cannot just sit back as a country and just accept it. We have to keep calling them out, and like Ms. Hughes says, if seeking the intervention of the international community. I know that we are signed on to the CAPAC and all of those bodies and so forth, and we will bring attention to this matter, because the Public Accounts Committee is, if I would say in my assessment, the most important committee, parliamentary committee that is.
If I could add, Adam, I think the challenge that we have is that the system assumed that any speaker would operate based on the premise of fairness, based on the premise of the people, and by the people I mean every single Guyanese, the people's right to know what is happening in their country with the governance of their country, whether it is in the area of expenditures, financial issues, whether it is in terms of the development plan for the country. The Parliament and the Speaker is the one that's supposed to guarantee that within the Parliament, all those so-called rights are given, are preserved. And so it's a difficult situation when the person that you have entrusted to be fair and to be objective chooses not to. All the other speakers before have, in their deliberate judgment, always assumed that any real question that any citizen wants to ask can be brought to the Parliament by a member of Parliament. There's nobody else that has assumed and said, go check the newspaper because the answer's in the newspaper. Knowing full well that if you answer in the Parliament, you are required to tell the truth. And what you say out on a platform or in a conference is not subject to the stringent rules of engagement that exist in the Parliament. So that is the problem, and citizens and organizations are the ones that are going to have to say, guys, we got to do better. We have a right to know.
If I could add just one additional case to just give context and to what Kathy is just talking about, one of the things that it is having an issue right now, and I put over as an issue, that committee is a committee that rotates the chairmanship every year. So the first year's chairmanship was held by the coalition, and that person was Sherwood Holder. And at the end of his year, the last meeting that was had by the committee was on the 9th of March 2022. Now, 9th of March 2022, Mr. Edgell took the seat as the chair, as representative coming from the PPP. From the 9th of March 2022 to date, Edgell called absolutely no meeting of the Economic Service Committee. No meeting was called at all. Now the 9th of March 2023 has passed. So naturally one would think that because this meeting, no meetings were called, because this year has concluded of his chairmanship, then naturally a meeting should just be called by the Parliament and have the new chair take the seat and to have meetings resume. That seems to be another issue right now. That seems to be another fight that is going to come up, because now we're being told that Edgell is still the chair and he has to call the meeting, and it is complete ludicrous to some extent as to what is going on. But as Ms. Hughes just said, the issue is that we have the Speaker of the House that should be making sure that these committees function as should. And when the Speaker is not doing that, everything is left in the wilderness, if I can say that much. We have instructions being given from directions that we've never heard it coming from before. We've heard the Speaker directing things, but I believe the clerk should be directing. And it's complete chaos when it comes to the operation of a lot of these committees. But again, we continue to say there must be a pushback, not just from the Parliament, but I implore that civil society gets on board and push back heavily with these matters as well, because all needs to be put in line when it comes to the operation of these parliamentary oversight committees.
Yeah, the Parliamentary Management Committee met this week, 2 days ago, and prior to that had not met since last year, March. As everybody knows, the Natural Resource Committee has never met. I am on that committee, but I can't call up the members and say, hey, let's come to a meeting and carry somebody to take the notes and start the meeting. And therefore, the responsibilities that lie with the Speaker and the Parliament as an independent entity, that is where the problem lies. And unfortunately, the system doesn't give us more recourse. We will be raising it with the international parliamentary agencies. Javon Vickery. Javon, are you here? I noticed you put a question in the chat. I'll read it. Beverly Alert, I think Beverly's still here. What does the AFC think about the administration's limited intervention on the violence in school? And 2, would you welcome the suggestion that there be heavy security at schools to prevent more violence? Beverly, you want to touch on that? I know you touched on a bit of it in your statement.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. Thanks, Mr. Vickery. I think Mr. Vickery in his question used the keyword limited. And that's exactly what it is. It's limited, but as I said before, it's a band-aid. You cannot address a sore with a band-aid. How much of a policing state are we going to descend into? We already see at every supermarket guns. Our children are growing up, we're seeing heavy artillery, heavy guns on it. At every corner is an arm. Why do we have to live like that? Are we now going to say, well, put armed security in the school? No way. We have to address the root of the problem. Why are our young people, why are people in general turning so much to violence? Why is violence seem to be an answer? And as I said, it is because of this growing frustration. We have a society where people are just, as you said, people are just afraid to speak out. People are afraid that they're going to be discriminated against, that they're going to be victimized. You know, ever so often I get a call from a party member or a supporter, say, Ms. Beverly, understand, I got mouths to feed, I got bills to pay. So if you see me with the PPP, it is out of necessity. I got to do these things to survive. That's where we're at. You know, it's like the Forbes Burnham playbook is back. You know, with the 70s and 80s remix, where persons, you know, if we used to say if you don't have a party card, you can't get the job. But now if you're not in a red jersey, you can't get the contract, your job is in jeopardy. That's where we have returned to as a society. That's the sad part of it. That 50 plus years after independence, we don't have mental independence. We cannot speak out. The civil society is trapped in that. Civil society of itself, the big contractors, the medium scale contractors, the small scale business people, all of them are afraid to speak out. All of them are afraid to offer honest criticism of this government. The next cohort of workers for the private sector will be coming from those same students who are either beating up teachers or being beaten on. We are producing a set of thugs, hooligans, and victims. And where does it end? Unless everybody can feel a sense of pride, feel that this national patrimony is theirs, it is ours, we're going to continue with this spate of violence. The teachers, they have a motto, we mold the nation. But when you're going to beat up on those very people that are supposed to mold this nation, supposed to produce the next set of leaders, the next set of employers, the next set of employees, the next set of doctors and of lawyers and electricians, skilled personnel, then how do you expect them to give out their best in the classroom? They'll be more concerned with their safety than in delivering a good product. And that is where our country is descending. And civil society need to speak out. The legal fraternity need to speak out. The trades union need to speak out. The religious organizations need to speak out. Teachers must not feel threatened, whether it's in the classroom, in the school compound, or on the road. They must not feel threatened. These are people who are held in high esteem. Now look how we treat them, because somebody believes that their money can get them out of anything.
Yep, yep.
And so, Mr. Vickery's question, it's limited. Security to some extent is needed, but we have to get to the root of the matter. We cannot just deal with the symptom. We have to get to the root of it.
Thank you, Beverly Alert. We are getting to concluding our press conference for today. Dennis, I see your hand up. Is that you just haven't taken it down, or do you have a final question?
Well, I already wanted a clarification of my earlier questions. Is it that the party did not agree wholly with the thrust of Mr. Bunce's statement? That is why they have not been vocal voluntarily?
No, we just have not discussed it as a party. As I said, we've had Mr. Ramjatan not here, and we had two other individuals that have not been here. So our executive have not had the opportunity to sit down and come up with a common position. That's it.
Hey, Kathy, let me answer Davina's question. I just found the...
Okay.
Yeah. Davina, with reference to your question, and I don't have the document before me, which is the new model PSA, but here, what I have in my possession, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Mr. I think it's Chang Lee is the person's name that writes on this new PSA, and he quotes in section 3.1 E.G. insurance and losses, and here's the quote: costs, losses, and damages incurred to the extent not made good by insurance are recoverable. Section 3.1 E.G. insurance and losses, costs, losses, damages, which means, which again is anything over and above insurance, which is, you get back to my favorite topic of full liability coverage and parent company guarantee to cover everything over and above insurance. But what this is saying is that is now anything over and above insurance is now recoverable, which means that we would be paying for it according to this.
Thank you, Vince.
And the last thing, Kathy, one last thing, because this here is important, Kathy, the same meeting you attend. For the executive director of EPA to be equating an EIA with something with a single car driving freight. Here's this quote. If we do an EIA, basically what he's saying, if we do an EIA for this gas plant, otherwise the EPA would order an EIA for all quote aircraft that comes into Guyana, or every car that you drive around, because they all emit pollutants. Now that's the most ludicrous and irresponsible statement that especially the chief of our EPA, to equate an EIA for a gas plant of that magnitude with a single automobile that emits emissions. That's where we are today with what we're getting out of the EPA that is supposed to be representing us. To equate an EIA for a gas plant with put it at the same level with an automobile driving around that emits pollutants.
Thank you very much. And I know, Davina, any further questions, send them to me, and I can always send them on to Dr. Adams, or you can send it directly to him. So, ladies and gentlemen from the media, thank you very much for joining us. Our presenters today, Jarita Finance, Dr. Vince Adams, Beverly Alert, thank you all. Behind the scenes, Mr. Sherrod Duncan. Folks, please be safe this weekend, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.